Hey, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Olivia Beavers, and I'm the Assistant Curator of Vertebrate Zoology at World Museum in Liverpool. And I'm presenting with Sonal Mistry, freelance scientific illustrator and designer. And we're going to be reflecting on a couple of the creative collaborations between the museum and Sonal to produce some illustrations that have helped us to address colonialism in our natural science gallery, as well as illustrating natural science specimens for a much larger project to help challenge the secondary school curriculum in Liverpool.
So during the presentation, we will cover three main areas. The collaborating with myself, which has then led into the Art Fund collaboration with Aakhila. And during the entire presentation, we will cover the impact these collaborations have had and how they've supported the museum.
So last year, the University of Liverpool hosted a workshop called Liverpool Empire and the Natural World, and they brought together the different museums, organisations and universities within Liverpool to talk about their colonial legacies and what they're doing to address them. So I presented on behalf of the World Museum and what the curators are doing, but also what NASCA's doing. And I presented a little bit on my own research about William Thomas March, who was a Jamaican naturalist and collector. And at the end of the talk, some of the community leaders were asking, well, this is great research, but how is it reaching the actual people, the visitors of the museum? And there was someone else who also asked, is there a permanent space in our gallery where we can talk about the sort of research that's going on within the museum? And at the time, sadly, the answer was no, or only with like temporary exhibitions or temporary displays that last about 3 months. So this was good feedback to bring back to the museum. And to add some context, we moved into where the collections are now in World Museum in 1860. And after just about surviving the Blitz, there were lots of refurbishments during the 1950s, 1960s, and 70s. And then this endangered planet narrative came in 2005. But as you can see, it limits the space that you can add to this. And yes, around this time, Sonal contacted the museum to see what kind of illustrations she could collaborate with us on as part of her illustration master's thesis. So this was a great opportunity to try to introduce decolonization to the gallery and also just make it more appealing to visitors.
So during talking with Olivia about addressing these challenges, I was looking at how illustration can be used as a practical engagement tool in the gallery. So I suggested we conduct some questionnaires. Sorry. I suggested we conducted some questionnaires to see what the audience actually wants. So as you can see, they would like more context, more information, there to be more colour, and for the gallery to be less childlike. So this gave me a clear direction as to what I should aim for and what the illustration should achieve. So this leads me on to how illustration can be used as a tool and not just decoration. So as a scientific illustrator, my role is to depict complex concepts in an accessible and engaging way without compromising accuracy. So one of the focus areas of my thesis was around preservation specimens, looking at the different types and what they are used for. One of my aims during this time was to see how I can reframe these objects without removing their context.
So some of the feedback that we received from non-natural science colleagues and also visitors was that they felt more of a connection between themselves and the specimens, especially for the lion cub in a spirit jar. Some of the colleagues were saying how they think more about where this specimen actually came from and kind of why we have it. So it just kind of, these illustrations help to open doors into more conversations surrounding the specimens. And then Sonal created this lovely infographic for our Claw Natural History Centre, which is another space that has very little interpretation. So this was nice because it's next to the elephant skull specimens. So these skulls are usually quite difficult for some people to grasp what animal they belong to. So having this infographic next to them helps people to make these connections and also see the differences in like a real setting. And then also it was nice to include maps and a family tree related to the mammoth as well, just to add a little bit more context from the questionnaires where people wanted a little bit more information. Yes. And then this brought us towards the end of Sonal's project, when it was ending. It was announced to the curators that some funding had been moved around from capital projects, and we were now able to refresh the Natural Science Gallery. So this initially entailed like new carpets, new paint, and some new lighting, but this very quickly snowballed into a much bigger project when we started recycling old cases from other museums within National Museums Liverpool, and that included adding new specimens and new interpretation. So this was a new kind of, we were able to start thinking about introducing colonialism to the gallery. Yeah, so this also led into a lot of issues to do with introducing colonialism, especially in parameters of like in 60 words for a label. This led to a lot of issues with terminology in a family-friendly gallery. So in short, we had about 2 weeks to write the labels for the gallery. The whole project was about 4 months long. And we were working with external designers, editors and architects. So there was a lot of conversations surrounding how to describe groups of people that are relevant for a family-friendly audience. At one point, aside from this, just for the scientific language that was being questioned, we had photosynthesis was on the cusp of being deleted from labels because it was like, well, will an 11-year-old understand what photosynthesis means? And yes. And so there was a lot of back and forth between curators and editors, and especially when introducing people like William Thomas March, their heritage isn't, I mean, his heritage comes from enslaved people that were brought over from West Africa to Jamaica. So he doesn't really fit the bill of the First Nations people or Indigenous knowledge. So at the end of this project, I sat down and talked with Sonal about the different difficulties we were having, and that's when she suggested illustration could have been used.
So yeah, I kind of thought about how like the use of illustration and the power it can have when you can't use specific words. So the visuals are mainly used as a way of idealizing the message that you want to convey, especially when there's specific restrictions around wording. So this is just an example of an illustration that I made, which would round up and be used to convey people of colour, but without it specifically having any wording attached to it. Which led to how we've tried to introduce colonial legacies to the gallery. So during one of my collection visits, I just questioned Olivia and was like, why are the trophy heads down here and not in public spaces? Like, why does no one get to see them? And I didn't know the history about trophy heads or how it's quite controversial, but once Olivia explained this to me, it kind of got me thinking about how I, through illustration, can help the museum to confront these difficult histories more openly, and like, how can we get it on the gallery?
So this, yeah, so open conversations of how we can link the specimens with the illustrations and bring it to the gallery. And Sonal was able to produce this infographic, which sits in our Savannah area where we have trophy heads, elephant skulls, but also taxidermy specimens as well.
So my main aim for this illustration was how I could use contrast, colour and context, which would sit alongside the trophy heads. I wanted the illustration to work as a standalone piece without relying on dense or defensive text. And this illustration offered a means to navigate these constraints by prompting curiosity and discussions without overwhelming the audience.
So the refresh was great because it allowed us to get these colonial narratives onto the gallery and discuss research that's been taking place. But it also opened a lot of doors in terms of further conversations within the museum teams and the leadership team on what a family-friendly gallery means, and accepting that, yes, it's a fun gallery, but we also need to address colonialism as well.
So building on my illustration work with the natural science specimens, I was invited to collaborate with National Museums Liverpool when they secured an Art Fund grant for its teaching fellowship programme.
So the leads for this project are Aakhila, and who couldn't be with us today, and Bethany, who is here today. And their aims were to create co-create a framework for decolonising teaching practices alongside NML's curators and learning teams. And the fellowship aims to provide a link between schools and NML to help engage students and teachers with natural science specimens and develop an anti-colonial learning framework.
So through this project, Aakhila wanted to design and deliver teacher CPD sessions, which is continued professional development, that builds confidence to engage with natural science collections and how to tackle discussions about decoloniality. She wanted to use this as a good opportunity to bridge the gap between schools and museums.
Yeah, so Aakhila and Bethany arranged to bring science teachers from her school to the museum to start getting an idea of how decolonisation shapes the work that we do, and how we can start to work together and provide case studies. This also carried over into a Liverpool John Moores University workshop for their PGCE teachers, again, providing some case studies for them to then take away for their lesson plans. And just trying to embed these approaches in their teaching and pushing for more critically engaged science education. Aakhila and Bethany also arranged for some of us to go into the schools and talk to students. This was aimed to, again, prompt their critical thinking and kind of think about whose voice are we hearing and whose voice hasn't been heard. And this helped to introduce students to hidden histories as well, and historical injustices within the like biology and medicine as well. So to help with this, Aakhila wanted to design resources for teachers and students in the CLAW and also in physical workbooks.
So for me, this is currently a work in progress, but I've been tasked to design 6 case studies using specimens from the collections which relate to biology, chemistry, and physics. For me, these specimens and instruments are not abstract ideas. They're physical things that have traveled through time, across culture, and through systems of power. So through drawing them, my aim is to closely observe it, which I also believe aligns with the project. The project is mainly about how we look at science, making people look at it again, asking whose knowledge has shaped it and whose knowledge has been ignored. From these case studies, I want to try and encourage curiosity and critical thinking within the students. And for me, if the illustrations can help teachers or educators open up those conversations in a way that feel engaging and approachable, then I think that's where the real impact lies.
So a big part of the project for Aakhila and Bethany's standpoint was to embed the principle of full voice and encourage confidence for the students to express themselves. This was achieved in a poster competition where the students were asked to research colonialism within any subject that they choose, whether it be chemistry, physics, or biology. So we ended up with a whole range of different poster titles, from How Colonialism Killed the Dodo to Decolonising Formula One for physics. So it was interesting to see what was important to them, and also to hear them say that they actually enjoyed researching because they were able to look into something that actually mattered to them.
These posters gave the students a platform to express their voice and be able to research and delve deeper into a topic that is meaningful to them. This shows that young people want to learn more and explore our colonial past and their multicultural histories. So for me, seeing the variety and depth of topics as well as how the students chose to visualize the information was impressive to see. They found that having an image or illustration alongside the information helped them to be able to grasp the concept better and improve their peers' understanding.
And inviting the families into the museums was one of the big things that Bethany and Aakhila wanted to achieve, because a lot of these families may not have been to the museum before. They may not have seen the inside of the museum or even just the collections. So this was a good chance to be able to, for the families to be able to see the changes that are happening in the museum, to make it an inclusive space where communities can see their own histories and contributions reflected. And yeah, thank you.
Can I just add, if anyone uses any pictures that include any of my illustrations on socials, please can you acknowledge and tag me in them? Thank you.
Well, that was fantastic. Does anybody have any questions? Well, I have one. First of all, those illustrations are absolutely stunning. There was the ones with the birds and heads. I was like, sorry. The illustrations were absolutely amazing. The ones with the birds, I was like, are they real? Are they not real? What's happening? What are the things that have kind of popped out to you specifically when you've been doing this project? What things have you like, yes, this is working, or oh my gosh, I haven't thought about that? What were the things that really stood out for you?
I think for me, like, it's really nice to be able to access the collections. Like, I am an external to the museum. I haven't really got a background in natural science. I come from the art background, so being able to look at things in a different way and in a different light, especially when it comes to a decolonial lens, and then also when it then relates back to my background, I think that's impacted the way that I see the specimens.
Did you?
Yeah. I think from the museum standpoint, it's just been nice to have like natural science specimens illustrated, because we have a little bit of a history with like Edward Lear painted some of our specimens back in the day. So it's nice to have like a more modern approach that we can then use going forward, either on the website or just printed and have it in the museum as well. So yeah, and it's also been nice for the children as well, because they can see a different career pathway that they might not have been exposed to before.
We've had another question. Do you get the sense that this project depended on the students' engagement of science as a whole? Sorry, deepened. Did it deepen their appreciation
Of science as a whole?
Yeah, or the engagement of science as a whole.
Yeah, I think so. I think especially when they did their poster presentations, a lot of them used illustration with their posters, so it shows that they already make the connection. But also being in like a multicultural school, a lot of them were really interested in finding out more about these topics within the science curriculum that they hadn't been told about yet. So I think it did deepen their interest as well into science in the future.
Great. Any others? No? Okay, well, oh, yes, there's one more question.
Wonderful presentation, thank you. Just a quick question about photosynthesis. So you mentioned there was initially objection to use of that word, that it might not be understood. I'm just curious, does your institution actually have a policy as to a targeted reading level for text for exhibits? And does that differ between what's meant to be a family-friendly exhibit versus a regular exhibit?
So they did like an audience development, and what came out of that was that the gallery is labeled as family-friendly groups. And that normally means that the reading age is around 11 years old. And then this family-friendly term is something that we're talking about with the learning and participation staff at the museum as well, because it's like, well, what defines a family? You have young families, you have families who have teenagers, and you have, I mean, older families, like an 80-year-old parent with their 50-year-old child. So we need to establish the parameters around that, and then I think it'll be easier going forward to write these labels and talk about more complicated histories. But yeah, it's something that's now ongoing, but it's been good that it's been highlighted in this project, that we need to iron out what family friendly means, and but also the reading age as well, and like photosynthesis, for example. But I think that's also something when you work with external people, not necessarily all of them, but I think the learning and participation colleagues within the museum, they're quite familiar with talking about these subjects with the public every day. So I think sometimes working with the staff that we have as well makes a huge difference, possibly as well.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. I really enjoyed that.